Alright there guys, and welcome back to another video. Now, I've been making videos for over 5 years, a lot of them gaming related, whether it was doing Let's Plays on this channel for the first 3.5 years of my channel's life cycle, or whether it was talking about them, which I started doing a bit more last year, or if it was playing them on my second channel in 2020 and last year, and a bit of this year. And in all that time, I've never actually done a game review. In all that time, I can't believe it. Normally, the way I do game reviews is I tell you guys what I thought of a game during the credits at the end of the Let's Play. That's usually how it would work. But I've never actually done a proper game review. And that's what we're doing here, as I'm going to be reviewing today Dying Light 2. Now, Dying Light 2 was a game I was extremely excited for. You guys might remember, back in 2018, E3 2018, I did a reaction video on this channel. That video is still there for you to find, where I did a reaction video to the E3 2018 trailer for Dying Light 2. I was very excited for the game. I loved Dying Light 1, so I was extremely excited for Dying Light 2. The game finally came out at the beginning of February, and I got my hands on it about a month later. And I've beaten it, so let's get into it. The story of Dying Light 2 is the main character, Aiden, is looking for his long-lost sister, Mia, who got experimented on by some scientist called Dr. Waltz, along with Aiden, back when they were kids. And there's multiple flashback scenes in the game of back then. The experiments Waltz tried on everyone ended up working the most on Aiden. And he has this unfortunate condition where he has been bitten, just like Kyle Crane was in the first game, and Aiden needs to keep his immunity up with that, otherwise he'll turn into one of the infected, which is a new dynamic to this game that was not part of the first game. Your immunity is only ever affected at night time as well. It's never affected during the day unless you go into a dark building, then it's affected. So the game has you travelling to different places around Old Villador, which is the first big area you get to, which is basically the slums of the game. Dying Light 2's version of the slums from Dying Light 1. And you also go to Fisheye, which is basically Old Town from Dying Light 1. And the story isn't... I mean, let's be honest. Who plays Dying Light for the story over anything else? Nobody. No one plays Dying Light for the story. Come on, I certainly don't. We play Dying Light. The reason why we even like Dying Light in the first place is the gameplay. That's what hooked us and got us interested in the game. So the story is, you do a bunch of missions for different people you meet. You get new abilities, you get new gear, new upgrades, all that good stuff. Aiden ends up finding Mia, but unfortunately it's too late and she dies very shortly after. And there's different choices you can make throughout the game that will affect how the game ends. So there's multiple endings to the game, of which I've only ever seen one, and that's the ending I got. So there's different endings depending on your choices that you make earlier in the game. And Aiden has in Aiden's condition of him may becoming infected if he is exposed to darkness too much and doesn't keep his immunity up, he basically is able to turn into a volatile. Remember those things from Dying Light 1? Ooh, they're back, but you can actually become one. It's always a scripted event. You can't just become a volatile at will. It only happens like 3 times throughout the game. And basically, when you're a volatile, apart from the final boss, when you're a volatile, you're pretty much invincible. Like, no one can do anything to you, and you take everyone out in one hit. But the final boss against Waltz himself is it's a lot better than against Rice from Dying Light 1. At least the game definitely improved the final boss. He has 2 phases. No, he doesn't. He has more than that. The first 2 phases are pretty much the same. But the one thing that isn't great about the final boss is the fact that every single boss in Dying Light 2 is fought exactly the same way. I can't remember, was it like that in Dying Light 1? Did you fight every single boss the exact same way? It's been a long time since I last played the game. But yeah, in Dying Light 2, every single boss battle is fought the same way. Attack your enemy a couple times, they'll do a power attack, and you do a backstep dodge out of the way. Rinse and repeat over and over and over. That's how you defeat the bosses in this game, and every single one of them is fought the same way. When you take phase 1 of Waltz out, you then get to phase 2, which is exactly the same, apart from Waltz does these really high jumps, which is also an ability given to Aiden when he's in volatile mode. So you have to do a bit of parkour to get to him, do a bit more damage, and then he'll jump down again, so you've got to go back and get him. And then phase 3 is volatile mode, where Aiden takes Waltz down properly in volatile mode. So yeah, the final boss is definitely better than the first game, but it's no different from any other boss in Dying Light 2, apart from it takes longer and he's harder. That's it. So now I gave you the basics of the Dying Light 2 story. Let's talk about what we actually bought the game for in the first place. The gameplay. So, the parkour is very similar in Dying Light 2 to the first game, which is good. We don't want too much altering. One thing I have noticed is when you climb a ledge, grab on a ledge and climb up on top of something, you do it a little bit quicker in this game than Crane does in the first game. Which I didn't even know at first, but I've been watching some Dying Light 1 videos recently, and the way Crane grabs onto a ledge and pulls himself up, Aiden does it a lot quicker. And Dying Light 2 is set in 2036. Quite a way after the first game, because the first game was set in 2021. A virus outbreak in 2021. Did Dying Light 1 predict a certain virus? Maybe. Well, not the same one in that game, but it predicted a virus that would be around in 2021. So the parkour for the most part is pretty good. Although there is a very annoying feature. This might be nitpicking, but there's an annoying feature where if you're holding onto the bottom of a ledge and you want to let go of it, if you press circle to drop down, if you just press it, Aiden doesn't drop down. He lets go and then instantly grabs the same ledge again. You have to hold it. Why? Why can't you just press circle and you just drop down? Seems unnecessary that you have to hold the button to let go of a ledge. Now the combat in Dying Light 2 is pretty similar to the first game as well. Infected are pretty easy to take out. You'll be doing a lot more strategic fighting against people than you did in the first game. An enemy can attack you. You can block your enemy's attack, and then it goes slow motion for you to get some good hits in. Let's let's talk about the old skill tree. So the skill tree from Dying Light 1 originally gave you 3 different skill trees you could upgrade, put in upgrades for. You had power, agility, and survivor. In Dying Light 2, agility was renamed to parkour and power was renamed to combat. And survivor is just not in the game. Like, they actually removed one of the skill trees from the first game. They just completely removed it. Which is annoying because the survivor skill tree makes you better with guns. Dying Light 2 doesn't have any guns. Guns have been completely removed from the game. The only ranged weapons you get are a bow and arrow and a semi-automatic crossbow. And even then, you only get the crossbow under a certain circumstance. What circumstance? Water towers. Water towers are basically another safe house. But what you do is when you put power back into the water house, you have the option to give it to the peacekeepers, which are basically the army in the game, or the survivors. And depending on which one you pick, you will get special features coming from those people, depending on which one you pick. If you pick the peacekeepers, you can get that semi-automatic crossbow if you keep picking them. If you choose the survivors, you can have airbags that you can grab and then jump off a ledge with, so you'll take 0 fall damage. So it's all a matter of depending on what you want to pick. What abilities or what equipment do you want? Is going to be the deciding factor of who you're going to pick. So with removing guns and the entirety of the survivor skill set, from what I remember of the Dying Light 1 skill trees, the combat and parkour skill trees aren't even that much bigger than they were in the first game. If even bigger, or are they even bigger at all? I'm not entirely sure. But the number one most important ability in all of Dying Light was indeed in this game. The dropkick. It's what got us all interested in the game. It's being able to dropkick zombies and people. That's what got us interested in Dying Light 1 all that time ago. And it's back. And it's just as overpowered in this game as it was in the first one. Maybe more overpowered. And it's the most satisfying thing ever to dropkick an enemy, especially off a cliff. It's so satisfying. Anyone who's done dropkicking in Dying Light knows the feeling. So the smaller features like lockpicking, that's back. Your medkits, there are 2 types of medkits. One that gives you a little bit of health, and a military medkit that basically just fully heals you. When you're in a dark when you're in a dark building or it's nighttime, your immunity will go down. To get that back up, you have to either go to a UV light. We remember those from the first game. Or you have these immunity boosters that Aiden can take that get his immunity back up. Very handy. Now, some clarification, I heavily exploited Dying Light 2. What I mean by that is, what I did was I had a friend who had already beaten the game, join my game, and give me some of his gear and weapons, of which they were way more overpowered. The gear and weapons he gave me were so much better than anything I currently had on me at the time. So I had, this game has different rarity. We have common, which is grey, uncommon, which is green, rare, which is blue, purple, which is legendary, and then gold, which is epic. Gold, of course, is the best tier. And I was given a lot of gold weapons and gear before I'd found anything even close to that in the game. And one of the key core features of Dying Light 1 was metal parts, wasn't it? Getting metal parts and repairing your weapons with them. In Dying Light 2, metal parts have been completely removed from the game. If your weapon breaks, it breaks. That's it. You can't ever use that same weapon again. And that's really, really stupid. Like, metal parts were so important in Dying Light 1, you always wanted to have a ton on you so you could repair your weapons. You could only repair your weapons a certain number of times, but you could repair them. Whereas in Dying Light 2, if your weapon runs out of durability, you can't use it again. You have to find a different weapon. Now then, equipment. What can you use? Well, you can use UV flashlights, but they're nowhere near as good as they were in the first game. The grappling hook makes a return, and it also is nowhere near as good as it was in the first game. In the first game, you shoot the grappling hook somewhere, it latches onto something and pulls you to it. In Dying Light 2, it's used as more of a rope you can swing off rather than a grappling hook that can pull you somewhere. Molotovs are beyond terrible in this game. Like, go back to Dying Light 1. Molotovs were super useful. In this game, they're pointless. They can't kill even one enemy unless you throw 2 Molotovs at the same enemy. Even the weaker enemies at the start of the game will not die to 1 Molotov. Stupid. Can't believe how much weaker they made some of the weapons. And now I need to nitpick a little bit more. So, features that, just little things that the first game had that the second game removed. The minimap. Dying Light 1 had a minimap in the top right corner. Dying Light 2 does not. Instead, it has a Far Cry styled compass at the top of the screen, at the top middle of the screen. Which in Dying Light 1, that's where your agility and power skills were, to show you how close you were to the next level. In the second game, you have to go into your menus and manually go to skills to check how much XP you are away from upgrading your next level. And when it comes to upgrading, a very key feature of upgrading is inhibitors that are usually in very dark and dangerous places. These inhibitors allow you to upgrade your stamina or health, which allows you to which then grants you access to more abilities you can upgrade. Even though in Dying Light 1 you would get agility points for pretty much 10 agility points for almost anything, in Dying Light 2 it's a lot harder to get these points. I don't remember if you got more XP in Dying Light 1 if you did things at night time, but you definitely do get that in the second game. I bet you did get it in the first game as well. And the last thing I want to talk about is the optimization of the game. This might just be because I played the PS4 version, and maybe this issue does not exist on the PS5 version of the game, but I had so much lag in the version of the game I played. Hell, even the PS4 Pro made this game lag a lot. The game would just freeze constantly to where you can hear background noise, but nothing's happening. Then you have audio. Even the audio was glitched so much in this game. You would start a mission talking to someone, and the subtitles would appear on the screen, but the person would not be saying, you couldn't hear the person speaking. And then randomly their audio just randomly appears. But because it didn't appear at the beginning, sometimes characters will cut each other's sentences off when that's not meant to happen. They will also, their textures won't even be loaded in sometimes, to where they're just grey mannequins, until the game renders their character model properly into the game. I don't know if it's because I was playing the PS4 version. It very well could be the reason why my game was so poorly optimized. But what is it about zombie games having a sequel release 7 years after the original and not delivering on the hype? The Last of Us Part 2 didn't deliver on the hype. This game also did not deliver on the hype. Dying Light 2 has been a fun game at times, but so many little annoying bugs in the game. And by the time this video goes up, the game will have a new game plus mode, which I might play. I'm assuming you'll just have all of your skills that you've upgraded throughout the game. You'll already have those going into the game. So to finish off with Dying Light 2, my thoughts are the game has a story that I wasn't that interested in, but no one was ever interested in Dying Light for the story in the first place, so that doesn't matter. The gameplay, when it works, is pretty good, but when it's not working and freezing every 5 seconds and glitching out on audio and not rendering characters in, that's pretty annoying. Removing some core little features from the original or changing them around, bit annoying. Didn't really. The HUD did not need changing whatsoever. Nerfing a bunch of the equipment. Why? Why nerf so much of the great equipment in the game to make it completely useless? If they were going to nerf it, they needed a middle ground. They went from here to here when they should have been here. My final rating for Dying Light 2 is a 6 out of 10. Just like The Last of Us Part 2, had so much promise and hype, but just didn't deliver on it. I hope you guys have enjoyed my first ever video game review on this channel. If you have, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and until next time, catch you later.